Hey everyone, last week I did a tutorial on how to make a Prezi effect in PowerPoint, an animation effect. I kept it kind of simple because I didn't want to overwhelm people, but I just wanted to explore some of the options that are possible. This week I want to take that the next step and explore some more advanced options for using Prezi effects within PowerPoint. So what I have here is a template that you might see as a template offered by Prezi on their platform, where it's something sequential. Now I built out the blue section. The 2, 3, and 4 are placeholders, and so I'm going to build that out with you. We'll work on red together. But I want to show you when I click on the blue section, it has an animation, and then I can dive into another level of blue. So I'll show you how to do some of these animations for a more advanced navigation option. And this is very much a Prezi-like effect that you can do right in PowerPoint. So let's take a look at the behind the scenes here at what I have built so far. I have a title slide, and this blue button is actually a section zoom. The other buttons are placeholders that we'll get to later. For the section zoom, I created a blue slide, and I just have a circle on the slide with a blue background. It has a border, it has a shadow, and it has the words in it. And you can see those effects on the right side here as I look at the format shape. I can see that it's a solid fill. Now on my title slide, if I have a lot of texture, I could actually make that fill semi-transparent so that you'd see through. The title slide that I'm using here, it's a solid background, so it doesn't matter all that much. I also have a drop shadow. You can go to Format Shape, and on the option Shape Effects, you can choose a default drop shadow, or you can customize it. For me, I customized it a little bit. You can do that in the Format Shape. There's shape options, and here you can play around with the transparency, the size, the blur, the angle, and the distance. I kind of like this shadow, so that's what I stuck with. And then I put a border around it as well. And you can see the border width that I chose is 20 points. You'll notice off to the side I have these thumbnails as well. These are each section zooms. So for the blue zoom, you could click on the blue button. It takes you to a section that I called Title Blue, and it has this shape right here. But then in the Transitions tab, I have it advance automatically to the next slide. In the next slide, I move the shape over a little bit, and then I put these other thumbnails onto the screen, and I apply a morph transition effect. And so what I have, it takes me from the title slide, clicking on the blue button, it morphs, it transitions into the blue title slide, the section slide, and then it automatically morphs into what we see here. So after I created the blue section, I created 3 more sections, which you can call it whatever you want. I called it blue 1, blue 2, and blue 3, because I'm not teaching you creativity right now. I'm teaching you function, and so that's the naming convention that I chose, but you can choose whatever you want. And so how I did these sections, I actually started first with a colored slide. This one has blue bubbles, and so I created a slide with an image that covers the entire slide, and then I have 2 text boxes right here. One text box says blue, one text box says bubbles. When I created this, then I duplicated it and put it right before, and then I put the text boxes off the screen, and then I converted the picture, which is rectangular, into a shape which is circular. And I did that for 3 sections. And you'll notice if I click on one of these zoom slides and click the zoom ribbon, then I remove the zoom background. If I don't, then it has that white background, and I don't want that. I don't want it to be rectangle. I just want to have the orbs that I created on the slide. And then for each slide, I went up to the zoom ribbon, and I want to return to zoom, meaning once I click through these slides, in this case it's slides 4 and 5. On the menu over here you can see 4, and it transitions automatically into this slide. And I could put more zoom slides at that point as well if I wanted to dive a level deeper. And once I'm done clicking on that, it'll take me back up to this main slide. And then once I'm done with this section, it'll take me back to the main section up here. So I go zoom, return to zoom. So this is complicated, I know. We're several minutes into this tutorial, and it's a high-level, fast-paced overview, but let's dive in and actually create a section for the red section at this point. I'm going to show you what I do. So first of all, I have a section called red, and on this red section I have a red circle with a border, a drop shadow, and then I typed in the word red And to type in words within shapes, first you just create the shape. So I can create any shape, and then I can type in the words and it'll appear right in the shape, and then I can modify it. And so I have a pink background, a red circle with a white border, the word red, and the font that I'm using, it's Calibri, body size 115. I bolded it, and then I put a drop shadow behind it. Now I have these 3 other slides. I'm going to create sections for each of these slides. I'm going to click Add Section, and this first one will be called Red 1. Because again, I'm not super creative, but I'm teaching you functionality. Then I have Red 2, and I have Red 3. Now you'll notice for each section I have 2 slides, and I'm going to do that again for red. One slide has words on it, the other slide is a picture with, but it's only a circle, it's not the entire picture. So I'm actually going to start backwards. I'll start with red 1, and I'm going to put my words on the screen. I'm going to put a text box. You can go Insert and Text Box, and I will put red for 1. I'm going to make it large. I'm going to bold it, and maybe I'll play around with the color. Maybe do it, maybe kind of a pink accented color. And I'm just going to find a font size that I think it looks good. I'm going to have to adjust this a little bit. And I'll go ahead and keep increasing it until I have the size that I want. So there's one. I'm going to hold Control as I move this around, and it'll create a copy. And then I'll just type in wall. So I'm going to click both of those. I'll go up to Format Shape. I'm going to align them. And I'll go ahead and align them to the bottom. That way they're on the same level. And perhaps I'll just tinker around with this a little bit. That's how I want the slide to end up. In fact, almost perfect. I think I'm just going to increase the size just a little bit. Move these around. There we go. Red wall. What I'm going to do is duplicate the slide, and now we're going to start from backwards. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to move these off to the side, just off the screen, off the slide there. Great. Now I'm going to work on making that circle. You can insert shapes and click circle. And then I'm going to create a circle. For the sake of consistency, I'm actually going to go up to one of these other circles, and I'm going to find the picture format and find the width and the height. I want them to be the same, and it's arbitrary, completely arbitrary, but it looks like the width and the height are 6.82. And you notice that this could be something of a rectangle, but when I click on Format Shape, then I can choose the height and the width. So I'm going to choose this to be 6.82 high and 6.82 wide. And then I'm going to go ahead and align it in the center and align it in the middle. So now I have a perfect shaped circle that's centered, and it's the same size as these other circles as well. I'm going to click on the background image, hold Shift, click on the shape, go to Shape Format, Merge Shapes, and I'm just going to take the intersect. So I'm only keeping whatever overlaps of the 2 pictures. So here I have my slide. It's an orb. I'm going to go to the transition, and I'm going to advance it automatically. And the duration, I think 2 seconds is probably a bit much. I'm going to just put that as 1 second, meaning it's going to go from this slide to this slide. It's going to take about a second. As soon as it's done transitioning, it'll advance to the next slide. And this slide, I want it to morph. And I think 2 seconds again is probably a bit much. Let's go with maybe 1.25 seconds and see where that takes us. One last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this object, go to the home, and I'm going to open the selection pane, and I'm going to rename this with 2 exclamation marks, and I'm going to rename it Red 1. You can rename it whatever you want. I'm going to copy that, and what I'm going to do is this image here, I'm also going to name Red 1. And that way when it morphs, it'll morph more seamlessly from this image to that image. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So there's that morph. I like that because the bricks in the middle really stay stationary, and it expands and then the words fly in. I think that's a very interesting visual effect. And I know that was probably a little fast-paced, so let's do that again. I'm a little bit lazy, so I'm just going to take these text boxes and I'm going to copy them and paste them. Let's change it up a little bit though. Instead of Calibri, let's do a different font. This is a bold statement, so we're going to do something bold. And let's change these slightly. Red wall. Alright, so I've got this. This is where I want it to end up. I can also do some other text effects. When I highlight the text box, I can go up to Format Shape. I can put a little shape outline on them if I wanted. Maybe something white, and you can't really see that, so if I make it bold, yeah, that doesn't look great, but it's an option if you wanted to play around with outlining the words. It's a little bit hard to read, I'll be honest. I think impact might be a little rough. Maybe if I less bold. Okay, if I take the bold off, because it already is a pretty bold font, I think that's better. That's probably what I'm looking for. Okay, now I have what I want. I'm going to duplicate the slide, and I'm going to work on this first slide, the transition slide. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this word way off to the side over here, and this word way off to the side over here, so they're going to kind of fly in like that. I'm going to draw another circle. And I believe what we were looking at was 6.82, so I'll just make 6.82 width and height. And again, I'll align that right in the center, meaning from the center from left to the right, and as well as in the middle, which means equidistant from the top and the bottom. Once I have that centered, I'm going to highlight both of those, click the background shape, click the shape, and go to merge shapes. I'm going to keep the intersect, and there I go. So let's rename this shape. I'm going to rename it 2 exclamation marks. This will be red 2, and I'll copy that, make sure that the other shape is also named red 2. Let's look at our transitions. I'm going to transition to this automatically and probably take 1 second, I think. And then this one I want to apply the morph transition. That's looking fun. And I think for this one, 2 seconds, let's just see what 2 seconds is like. And we'll do this one more time. I'm going to copy my text boxes. And zoom in a little bit, paste my text boxes, red leaves, zoom out a little bit, and make some adjustments. These ones I will have one on top of the other. I'm going to click both of those, and I'm going to make sure that they are both center aligned. In fact, I think I'll center them within the text boxes as well. Let's pick a different font. How about this time, I don't know how to pronounce that, Aharoni. Looks pretty fun. Looks like I need to make one more adjustment. Alright, red leaves. Alright, I have my slide how I want it. I'm going to duplicate it and then work on the first slide. How do I want these to fly in? Maybe left and right. Is that what I did for the first one? First one I did left and right. This one maybe we can do up and down. Let's try that. And since we're going to be using the morph transition, let's try something else that's interesting. I'm going to highlight both of those text boxes, and I'm going to change the font color to something very bold, like a dark red. And so that way when it transitions, it'll go from dark to light, and then they'll fly onto the screen. And now we have to work on our shape, which I'm going to insert. I'm going to insert a circle. Again, go up there, and 6.82 is what we're looking at. And I'll make sure that it's centered, and I will make sure that it's in the middle. Highlight both of those. When I merge shapes, I'm going to keep the intersect. I screwed up. I clicked the shape before I clicked the background image. And I should have mentioned that in the first one, you want to click the background image and then click the shape, and then format shape. Shape options, keep the intersect of those two. When you do the opposite, then it's going to keep a blue circle, and it's going to delete all of the leaves. Great, now I'm just going to go up to the picture in the selection pane, 2 exclamation marks. I'm going to click on red 3, or I'm not going to click, I'm going to type in red 3, copy that, and rename this one red 3 as well. So we have one more step before we're ready with this section. And again, from the title slide, I'm going to have 4 sections, a blue, red, green, yellow section. Within the red section is going to be pretty easy. It's just going to be 2 slides, and then I'm going to have an additional red 1, red 2, and red 3 sections. And so now that I have these other sections, I'm ready to start going with this section here. I'm going to first insert a section zoom, and I'm going to click my new red slides here. I'm going to insert those. Let's put them off to the side. Alright, so I have, let's see, the brick wall. I'm going to click on each of these, click on zoom. I'm going to delete the backgrounds first things, because I don't want to have little Japanese flags with white backgrounds. I want to delete the backgrounds and just keep the orbs. This one here I'm going to align. I'm going to put it in the middle and just off to the side. And then these guys, I will align them so that they are aligned to the left. Now maybe aligned to the right. And I want these to fly onto the screen. So I have my first screen. Okay, now let's duplicate this slide. I'm going to go back to that slide. Let's look at the transition. So the transition is going to advance automatically. That's what I want. For this next slide, I don't want it to advance automatically. I want it to stay there, but I do want it to morph. And then we'll make some adjustments. I'm going to move this over to the left a little bit, make room for these other guys. And I will just place those. I'm going to hold shift while I move this one over so it stays even. And then this one, I'm going to try and align it equidistant to the top one. It's all arbitrary. Now you'll notice in the blue section, I actually created drop shadows that were similar to this drop shadow. And I can do that again. Now you'll notice this orb here has a drop shadow, and these don't have drop shadows. If I wanted to create a drop shadow, let me zoom in a little bit. I can click on this and I can go to Zoom Effects and put in a preset drop shadow. If I like that, then it's fine. Otherwise, I'll right click on it and I'll format the section zoom. I'm going to look at the size, the blur, maybe increase the size a little bit, bump up the blur. That's a lot, so I'm going to bump up the transparency a bit. I want it to be a little bit subtle. Maybe scoot down the size just a smidge. So yeah, you can play around with all of these functions here. Now what I find is interesting is that once I have these set, I can't go to the Home tab and click the Format Painter so that I can make these others the same, the same settings. But I could create a shape perhaps and remember those settings, 68, 102, 13, and I can type those in, 68, 102, 13. I'm going to put the distance down to 0 and the angle down to 0. Alright, so now I have the same shadow, and at this point I can go to the Format Painter, double click on it, and I can click on these guys and set it, and then I'll just delete that. So let's look at what we have. From the title slide, we'll enter this slide, and I have the transition set to 1 second duration, and then it'll automatically advance via morph to this slide. So it'll animate and it'll scoot over, and then these other elements will fly onto the screen. When I click on either one of these, then it'll take me to a slide that'll morph into another effect. And I just want to make sure, I'm going to hop back over here, go to zoom. I want to make sure that return to zoom is set. And I can see by the icons here that this zoom has slides 12 and 13, and after I'm done, it'll return to this slide. 14, 15, it'll return, then 16, 17, it will return. Now I'm going to go back up to the title slide. I have this placeholder here that I'm going to replace. I'm going to insert, and I'm going to insert a section zoom. At this point, I am ready to have the red section zoom. I'll go ahead and insert that. In the zoom, I'm going to remove the background, and then I'll just increase this slightly. And this placeholder I can move off to the side and fit it right here. And I should mention that this title slide is just a background image that I got from unsplash.com, and then I put in some elements, these shapes here. I can move those around a little bit. It's just something typical. I was browsing on Prezi looking for some kind of process template that they have, and they have stuff that's similar to this, and so I can move it around sequentially, maybe turn this into an arrow if I wanted. And for the background, I went and took the image, I copied it, and then I went up to design and format background, and then I pasted it in there. You can also format it and insert perhaps a picture from the stock pictures that Microsoft gives you if you're on Office 365. I'm going to look for stock images that deal with Office. See if there's anything that's interesting. Maybe this office with a table and chairs, I could insert that and have that be my background. And then I can move these things around accordingly. So before we preview, let's just look at the settings for this one last time. I have zoom. It looks like 10 and 11, and then it will return after 11. Of course, at 11, I have other branching that it can do. It can go to 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So zoom, it's going to return to the zoom. The background is off. That's great. Let's take a look at this and look at the new section that we made. When I click on red, then I have the animation effect, and I can click on these sections and see that animation, return back out. Great, I like that effect. Looks like what we didn't do is have this advance to the next slide. So let me click on that, and now it advances and it returns. So we almost got it, and then when I'm done with that, it'll return back out to the main slide. So let's take a look at that and look at the transition, and indeed it isn't advancing automatically. In fact, let's bump that down to 1 second. And that's more just me being patient. It's your own personal preference. Alright, so I came in with the blue and we did the red together. Now I'm just going to speed up the time, play you guys a little bit of music, and I'm going to finish off the green and the yellow sections. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the background music there. I'll show you what I did is I just replicated green and yellow, the same process that we did before. So I have a green section and it goes from this green slide, it'll morph into a slide with the thumbnails for the other layers. These are sections, so I created green sections 1, 2, and 3. Each one goes from the thumbnail and I remove the background and it goes onto the content part of the slide. And back again, and the same thing for yellow. I switched a few things around with yellow. The circle, I didn't make it right in the center of the slide. I made it to the side of the slide so that when it morphs into the main slide, it expands outward. And for the robot, I did the opposite. But essentially, it's the same functionality. So let's preview what we have at this point. All right, we've tested out the blue and the red functionality. And so let's take a look at green. And it morphs in, and I have some options here. Green fields, and you don't have to go sequentially. You can go in whichever order is linear for you. Just like in Prezi, you can click on various aspects and it'll go to that portion of the slide. And then finally yellow. You can see the effect, the circle's on the side of the slide and not in the center. For bananas, it's in the center. For this banana effect, I have a text box that's filled with yellow just to give it a little bit more contrast, but I softened the edges quite a bit, and the text box actually extends quite a bit off the screen to the left and to the right, so the soft edges are only on the top and the bottom. And then I bumped down the font size so that it's a tiny font, and so you can see that transition, it kind of grows onto the screen. And then finally our little robot. And back out, and then we're back at the main slide. And so this is a 3-tiered Prezi interaction, in that you have the first level, which is the title slide. When you click on any one of these icons here, blue, red, green, or yellow, it'll take you to a second layer. And on that second layer, it'll automatically advance, and you have more options, which will take you to the third layer. And of course you can go deeper than that as well. I could have a slide here and I can have additional zoom section slides. I would just have to create sections within the blue slide. Or it doesn't even have to be within the blue one section. It can be any section, and then whenever you insert a section zoom, you can choose which section it is. So these don't have to be in order at all in terms of the navigation. Right now I have 33 slides. Several of those, looks like 17 of those are sections. 17 sections with 33 slides. You can have as many sections and as many slides as you want. You just want to make sure that you have it organized, that it makes sense to you. And that's why I recommend naming the sections so that it's something maybe hierarchical, something that makes sense to you. Now one last thing I can show you before we depart for the day is right now I kept things simple for this interaction. I have a circle with an outline and a slight drop shadow, and I put some text in there. If I wanted to, I can delete that text and I can replace it with something like an icon. So I can search for something analytics related, maybe something like that, and I'll go ahead and fill it with the color white, and I can increase that a bit, and then you can see on the title slide that it changes. So you don't have to have words, you can have icons, and this is your presentation, so you're going to be navigating it. If it's something that you're handing off to somebody else, you want to just make sure that it makes sense, that they know that things are clickable and that it's logical. And of course I'll go ahead and change this to replace this word as well with the icon. I'll drop that icon right in there, and then when I click on that, then it goes from that to that. So that's an option. Another thing you can do is you can actually save things as a picture and then replace the slides. When I go up to zoom, I can change the image and I can change it to a picture that I have saved on my computer, or I can change it to a stock image of some sort. For this example, let's pick something silly. Let's pick something ridiculous, a sticker of sorts. Maybe a cat who is coddling a mug of hot cocoa or something. And so now when I preview this, then I can click on the sticker here and it'll take me right to there. I don't like doing that because I I really want this to be a thumbnail of the actual section zoom so that that animation is seamless. For me, that's important. For you, maybe it's not important. But I really like this sequence where it zooms in, it moves over to the side, and then I can navigate from there. For me, that's important. But just know that there are a lot of options, that you're not tethered to one way of doing things. You can be as creative as you want.